Hey everyone, welcome to the first narrated tutorial. I'm sorry it's taken so long. This year has been particularly busy just with projects and the obvious problems with general lockdown hasn't particularly helped. I thought I'd start with this master study. I think some of you were interested in these, that's why you signed up. I figured this is probably the best place to start. This is probably more of a test more than anything else, just to see how I can construct these videos. This isn't something that I do very often, so you may just have to bear with me a little bit. I'll just talk you through the painting process as I'm watching this back. I'm not actually drawing at the same time. So first of all, looking at the original painting, there isn't a visible horizon line, so I've gone with the river that seems to cut through the centre of the painting. It breaks apart the mountains and the midground and the foreground. So that's where we've got this line cutting the painting in two. I'm also using that as a guide, so obviously the mountains just stop at that horizon line, so we can now think about that top half and the space that we've got. So this peak on the right, you can see that almost touches the top, so obviously this is a guide that we've got now. We've got this rectangle box to fit everything in. I tend to think about imaginary vertical lines going through the center of the picture, and then I'll think about how far I can go across with the peaks, and then I might split that into two again, so there's 4 quarters, and then I'll just kind of gauge where those peaks all line up with each other in those spaces. You can also imagine another line going across horizontally, and this will give you an idea of how high up those peaks should go. Are they above or below that line? I mean, you could draw those in, but I tend to just imagine that they're there and then just roughly drop the lines in. What I'm actually doing is I'm looking at the reference image, and then I'm drawing a line, so I'm literally bouncing my eye to and fro really quickly between the reference and the actual painting. So I'm only drawing a line when I know exactly where it needs to go. So yeah, it's literally my eyes just bouncing 1, 2, 1, 2, that quick between the two images, all the time thinking about those vertical and imaginary horizontal lines. Are all these lines on in the right plane? Are they the right angle as well? Obviously you can think about any vertical lines that you can see. You can line those up and then look at all the other angles and all the other mountains, and then how far do they rotate. I'm now building up some of the foreground. again, I'm imagining these vertical lines, but I'm also now lining up the foreground with the mountains in the background, so you might see the cursor kind of bounce up and down a little bit in like a vertical fashion, just as I line these trees and rocks up in the foreground with the peaks in the background. So we've already got the map, how far we need to go across. So now we just need to match this foreground area up with the existing peaks. The excuse me, the horizon line, well, which is the river, that's giving us the indication how high these trees need to go. And you can see I've drawn half of the tree line there, and then I've gone over to the left hand side to draw the other half, because I know how far across that needs to go, because I can line it up with that big peak above it, and we've got that dip in the peak, which lines up with this tree that drops in here. And again, I can see that the bottom of that tree doesn't quite overlap with with that river, that horizontal line. The top of this tree doesn't go above the peaks, so we know where to stop there. This is all just useful information that you just need to keep scanning across, just to check that you're putting your construction lines in the correct place. This is probably the most important part of the painting, making sure that all of your lines are in the right place, nothing's too far over, nothing's too far up. Trying to fix these things later on will be much more difficult, so spend the majority of the time looking at the reference and then make the mark. But just drop a line in, drop 2 lines in, look at the reference, drop a line in, look at the reference, drop a line in, and just build it up slowly. It's the easiest way to do. If you just look at the reference and then drop in a bunch of lines, chances are you've probably remembered a few of them incorrectly, and you'll probably have to correct something later on if you don't spot it. So it's best to go relatively slowly at this stage and just keep bouncing your eye between the reference and the painting. So I'm just putting a few details in on the foreground here. Most of this is in shade, so I'm just picking out a few of the rocks that are a contrasting value. Some of the rocks in the foreground are really bright in comparison to the sort of the grass and all the foliage. So they're quite visible. There's the road in there as well. That helps to draw your eye through the painting. We've got this little kind of village thing on this rock here, and this area down here I'm just painting in now. These are all hedges and little clumps of trees. This is probably my favourite part of this painting, actually. It's got an amazing sense of depth and scale. These trees are just tiny little dots in comparison to this this clump of rocks and trees on the left hand side. So I'm just roughly mapping a few of these in. Some of those trees are probably not in the right place, but this is a study. It's not something that needs to be exact. The things that you can learn from doing studies are generally composition, tips for colours and values and things like that. So don't try to create every detail that you can see. So I think I've created another layer here. Starting to drop the sky in. This layer is underneath the kind of construction line blocking in layer. I'm going with a kind of a bluey green, but then I can change some of that later on because it's going to be on its separate layer. Most of this painting seems to be kind of a yellowy kind of green colour, so a lot of the sky tends to reflect that colour as well on the particular image that I've sourced. It's not just a bright blue sky. The colours that I'm selecting here are obviously desaturated because we're off way into the in the distance here. So if you look at the colour wheel and the triangle in the centre, the marker indicating the colour, it's pretty much hugging the vertical line on the left, and as you probably know, this means that the colour is almost grey. And just moving the cursor just a little bit off that vertical line gives you just a tiny bit of colour, and then we can swing that round into different blues, greens, purples. We want this background colour to be a lot cooler than the foreground. The foreground's mainly reds and warm yellows. So the background, we've got these greens and blues, but they're all greyed out. I'm dropping in the darker values first. Tends to be the way I like to work, and then the highlights we can come in afterwards with a lighter value and probably a warmer contrasting colour. So these are all generally the darker shaded areas. Probably won't go much darker than this, but we do want to separate these mountains from each other. So some of the edges we might increase the depth of some of the greens and the blues just to separate these rocks. I'm pretty much just throwing in a few random shapes here and there, just trying to get a feel for the kind of the terrain. You should always be looking for lines that can help you describe what direction the terrain's kind of flowing into. You'll see a lot of contrasting lines where one mountain will be coming down from the left hand side towards the right hand side, and then you'll probably have a mountain in front of it going the opposite way, so you can then tell that they are completely different landscapes. They're facing in opposite directions, and you can demonstrate this with the brush strokes. Just throw a few brush strokes in that direction and it makes all the difference. This area here was a little bit darker than I'd originally put down. It's the closest of this group of mountains, so it should have the darkest value. I've put enough information in there now, so I've got rid of my construction lines. So this is just the base layer that I've thrown down. I'm now looking at the edges. The edges of this mountain in the background, so I'm going to work pretty much from the back to the front here. Once you've established a range of colours, we've got quite a few different sort of greens and blues and purples in here. You can colour pick from a few areas instead of going back to the colour wheel. The brush that I'm using is actually a mixer brush, so a lot of these colours are the result of different colours blending together, and then when you colour pick that colour and then move over a different colour, you're creating different colours all the time. So that's one of the benefits of using a brush that mixes with underlying colours. You don't have to keep going back to the colour wheel every sort of a few minutes and changing the colour. I've gone back to the colour wheel there to change the colour because we're now moving into some of the warmer tones. So again, I'm not far off that vertical line in the colour wheel, but we're moving down a little bit. You can see the value is a higher contrast now to that background. This just creates a lot more depth between that bigger mountain in the background and these group of slightly darker mountains in the front. I'm looking for some key areas to block in here. It's quite a big shape. There's a lot going on in this shape in the original painting, and it's helpful just to try and block in a few key areas that can help you move around the shape without getting too lost. So if there's anything that really stands out, try and block that in roughly where you think it is, and then you can build out from those areas. There's an area here where I'm dropping in some yellows. This seems to be a break in the tree line, so it's a kind of a grassy area, and that again breaks up these two rocks. We've got this darker rock just in front of it, and this grassy area tends to run just behind it on the left hand side, and then overlaps it on the right. Going a little bit more into the greens with the saturated colour. Still staying in roughly in the yellow. But we're now moving closer, so the colour should be more saturated. This area down here is now, I think that's in the shade, but it's a lighter local colour in comparison to the tree lines. It's another grassy area. And I'm probably adding a few too many details in at this point, but I tend to sometimes just drop a few details in early on. It just helps to give a sense of what's going on in one area, and then you can fill the rest of it out later on. A lot of this I probably won't touch again once I've dropped just a few of the darker and lighter contrasting colours. We've got the general shape of the outline, the silhouette, so we just need to describe the direction a little bit. The light, it appears to be coming from the right hand side, so that's something that you need to think about when you start dropping these warmer values on. The difference between these colours is quite subtle at this point, but because the green is cooler than the yellow, you can just about make out the difference. I've only used one brush for this painting, so there's no textures that I've used to use as a shortcut. So unfortunately, you are watching me create the texture by hand. Still working on this background area. There's a kind of a snowy peak on top of this mountain here. Now we haven't gone completely white. You've probably heard many people say you should never use pure white or pure black within a painting. I mean, you can use pure white and pure black, but it doesn't look particularly realistic. A lot of natural colours are kind of more muted. I've blocked in most of that kind of snowy area. It's probably a little bit too dull, so I can adjust that with a little bit more highlight. There's also a bunch of clouds that seem to be blowing off the top of that peak there. So most of that's in the same colour and the same value at the moment. Just fixing the corner of that mountain. There's a little bit that pokes over the top of the snow. Tiny detail there. There seems to be a little crevice that's filled with snow, or possibly a waterfall or something. I'm just looking over the area. Are there any highlights that I can just pick up on? And we've got this cloud on the top of this peak on the right here. I'm just kind of dabbing the brush so you can see the blue cursor going on and off there. That's me just dabbing the pen against the screen. I've got the pressure sensitivity, so obviously pushing on harder gives you the bigger brush mark. The corner was probably a bit too bright there, so I've actually colour picked some of the sky from the left hand side and dropped that in just to create the edge of that cloud. And then I've picked up the value of the white on the cloud, so I'm just going across and just creating a little bit more form with the brighter white that we've got selected. Helps with the edge control to describe the shapes if you've got that contrast. So I'm not going over the whole thing. I'm just kind of dropping it in areas to give it a crisper edge, or just to make just a tiny bit, a little bit brighter. Moving over to the left hand side, I think there was just a couple of areas where there's a tiny bit of snow, so I think we're almost done with the this back row of mountains here. So coming back to the foreground, again I'm looking for different colours, different values to help separate some of these edges, create form. So we've obviously got the darker, cooler colours in the shade, and then the warmer, more saturated colours are getting hit with the sunlight that's coming in. Detailing some of these rock faces here with some darker values, just putting some construction lines in just to show that there's like trees and vertical cracks going through these. I think most of this area is probably not dark enough. Towards the end of the painting, I tend to fix some of that area with the shadow map, the magic layer that I tend to use. It's saved many paintings. It's not always apparent that the values aren't quite right when you're sitting creating a painting. Sometimes you're a little bit too close to it, and then you look at it when you think you've finished, and some of the values aren't quite right. So I tend to go over it with the shadow map layer, and that usually helps fix things. As I was saying earlier, this area seems to be mainly trees, but it's kind of broken up with these areas of grass, these kind of paths that go through the trees there. This particular part is a shadow. There's a big shadow from a cloud. It's on the face of this rock here. Details on the original painting are obviously go into a lot more depth, but as I said earlier, this is mainly just a study, just to learn things about composition and value and colours. So I'm going darker with this edge here, trying to separate it from that area behind it. Give the impression that it's a lot closer. The foreground is extremely dark in value, so this particular area is almost the bridge. using the a kind of a brighter yellow on this now, because this is getting closer to the foreground. So we want to stay away from the blues at this point. We want to start getting into our warmer tones. And we've even got yellows in the shadow in this area because it's becoming closer, so the atmosphere isn't as dense. Decided that it was probably a little bit too yellow, so I've thrown a bit more green in there. It's often quite surprising when you do studies like this and you realise that what you think is green is actually just a dark yellow. So I don't think I ever really go that far into the green on the colour wheel. If you see, it's always kind of hanging around in the yellow or just on the edge. Just trying to create texture. Here and there, still a few areas on this rock here as well that I'm not quite happy with. There's a little area down the bottom here that I haven't addressed yet. There's some kind of tree lines down there. There's a little rock that sticks out in the middle. These trees are obviously just texture. They're tiny little dots. They don't really resemble anything, so I mean a texture brush would be kind of handy just for dropping some shapes in at that point, but as I said, I'm only using one brush for this painting. I mean, I was going to say that this can be done potentially in any version of Painter. I don't know which versions everybody's using. So I've just tried to make this as easy to follow as possible. I'll link the brush, so if you want to try using it, you can. Just creating the edge of this rock, so the bottom of it and the bit on the left, there was like a tiny little tree down there. So now I'm going to drop the river in. Actually holding shift here and just dropping this line in because it is so straight. I'm kind of clicking it on and off and using a bit of help from the software there. So we've gone with a colour that's pretty similar to the sky, but a little bit darker, a little bit more intense. with the colour. We're kind of just hanging around the edge of the blue and the green. And the value of the water is darker than the rock, because it's actually closer, so it should be starting to get darker. So now I'm going to block this foreground area in. Because we're in the foreground, it's a sunny day. It's warm, so these are all reds and yellows. So we've gone really low in value here. This whole area is all in shade. And you really start to see the contrast between these values and these colours. So you've got this really desaturated, cool background, and then this warm, dark value of the foreground. These are all good tips for if you're painting things from your imagination. This extreme contrast that we've got here. I'm just pretty much blocking in per the construction lines. So I've just gone around the outline and filled in. And then realised I probably should have put the mid-ground in before I started doing the foreground, but this is just the blocking in layer, so it's not too difficult just to fix that. You can see the white lines all over this. That's because I've used the same brush, and it is that mixer brush. So it picked up the underlying colour of the canvas, which was white. So we've got these white lines now instead of the darker lines that we had before. Something that you could use to your advantage. I think normally I kind of go over the top, but this time I thought I'm going to keep the construction lines and put a layer underneath and block in. Just dropping in some of the trees there. So again, we're still in these kind of yellow colours. Don't be fooled thinking that this is all green, because it's actually just a darker yellow. I'm still quite close to the vertical line on the colour wheel there. It's kind of a grey yellow, but when you use that colour against the warm reddy brown, it looks green. That's one of the really good things that I tend to learn from these master studies is the use of colour. So that's most of it blocked in, and I think we'll probably finish there, and then we'll pick up in the second half for the detailing.